In the Highlands, 3 centuries ago, a boy of 14 could slip over a mountain pass in the dark, lift 50 head of another clan's cattle, and drive them home across trackless country by moonlight without waking a soul. And his own people called it not theft, but his education. Today, we lock our doors at night and could not find our way out of a forest. But hold on to this. Number 14 on this list was a way of fighting so terrifying that it shattered trained professional armies for 50 years, until one grey morning near Inverness it failed completely, and a whole world died with it. And number 3? A single burning cross, carried from one man's hand to the next, could raise 1,000 armed men on a hillside in a single day, with no roads, no writing, and no orders given. This was one of the last tribal warrior societies in Europe, and it survived for 1,000 years on skills we have utterly forgotten. If a lost world this fierce deserves to be remembered, subscribe. Now let's count down the 25 skills that kept a Highland clan alive before Culloden. Number 25. Duthchas. To understand everything else, you have to understand the idea the whole clan was built on, and it is an idea we have almost completely lost. It was called duthchas, and it meant, roughly, that the land belonged to the clan, to the people, together, and that the chief did not own it so much as hold it in trust for them. A clansman was not a tenant paying rent to a landlord. He belonged to that glen, and that glen belonged to his people, and the chief was the steward of a shared inheritance. That single belief turned a scattered collection of families across a hard country into one living body, bound to the ground and to each other. We rent our lives from strangers now. They belong to the earth under their feet. Number 24. Fosterage. And the bonds inside that body were built in a way that would astonish us. The most powerful of them all was fosterage. And here is what it meant. A chief would give his own young son away to be raised for years in the household of a lower-ranking family of the clan. The boy grew up as their child, at their fire, and the tie it created was reckoned by everyone to be stronger than blood itself. It bound the great family and the humble one together for life. Foster brothers would die for each other on a battlefield when true brothers might not. They deliberately built their deepest loyalties by handing over the thing they loved most. We would trust almost no one with our children. They trusted with them on purpose to make a people out of separate families. Number 23. Manrent. Below the chief, the whole clan was held together by sworn bonds, and the great one was called manrent, a family that needed protection. In a land with no police and no distant king who could reach them, would come to a powerful chief and enter into a bond of manrent, an oath of loyalty and service given in return for his protection. It was a contract written not in property but in fidelity, and it was taken with deadly seriousness on both sides. In a world where the state simply did not exist in your glen, your safety was not bought with money or law. It was bought with an oath and defended with a sword. A handshake there could mean your life. Number 22. The crann-tara. And the clan kept its very identity alive through one extraordinary human being, the crann-tara, the keeper of the tradition. In a society with almost nothing written down, this man held the entire clan in his trained memory. The genealogy of the chief back through the generations, the precedents, the boundaries, the old judgments, the legitimacy of who ruled and why. When a new chief was made, it was the crann-tara who recited his descent aloud and so declared him true. There were no written deeds, no archive, no title on paper. A man's memory was the title, the law book, and the constitution of the clan, carried in one head and handed to the next. It could take a lifetime to learn, and when he recited a chief's descent at his making, a whole people heard their own history spoken back to them and knew, in that moment, exactly who they were. Lose him without an heir to his knowledge, and a people could lose its own past. Number 21. The chief's burden. We imagine a clan chief as a tyrant in a castle, but the truth was almost the opposite, and it was a skill in itself. A chief's power rested on obligation. He was expected to feast his people, to protect them with his own body and his sword, to judge their disputes fairly, to support the old and the widowed, and to answer for every soul in his name. A chief who failed those duties, who was mean or cowardly or unjust, could find his people simply drifting to another lord, because loyalty had to be earned and re-earned. It was authority as service. He did not merely command the clan, he owed it everything. That was the clan at peace. The Highlands were rarely at peace, and number 14 is where it turned to slaughter. Number 20. Cattle as wealth. Now to how they lived, and it all began with the cattle. In the Highlands, wealth did not sit in a strong box. It walked on 4 legs. The small, hardy black cattle were the entire economy. A man's worth was counted in beasts, a bride's dowry was paid in beasts, a chief's power was measured in the size of his herds. Everything, rent, feasting, trade, status, survival through winter, ran on cattle. And because your wealth was alive and walked about on open hills, it could be driven off in a night by anyone bold enough, which meant your bank account had to be guarded, constantly, with a sword, and it meant the taking of it became a way of life. Number 19. The creach and the School of the Moon. Because raiding another clan's cattle was not, in the Highlands, simply a crime. It was an institution, the creach. And for a young man it was a rite of passage into manhood. Boys were trained in what was wryly called the School of the Moon, how to travel light and fast over the mountains at night, how to find and gather another clan's herd in the dark, and how to drive it home over trackless country before anyone woke. To succeed on your first great raid was to become a man in the eyes of your people. The same act that would have hanged him in England was, in his own glen, the proof that he was ready to be counted a warrior. Number 18. Driving the stolen herd by night, and getting the beasts home was a craft as fine as taking them. Moving dozens of half-wild cattle across mountains in darkness, in silence, keeping them together and moving fast, reading the passes and the rivers, staying ahead of the furious pursuit that would be coming behind. That was the real skill and the real danger. A raid could turn into a running fight through the hills, and the men who were good at the getaway lived to raid again. It was the escape, even more than the theft, that separated a great cateran from a dead one. Number 17. Blackmail. And out of all this raiding grew something so effective that its name is still in our mouths today. Blackmail. A powerful clan would offer the farmers and lesser families around it a deal. Pay us a fee, a black rent, in the old tongue, mail meaning rent or tax, and we will guarantee your cattle against theft and recover them if they are lifted. Refuse to pay, and, well, your cattle had a way of vanishing. It was a protection racket, run at the scale of whole districts, and it worked so well that the word for it, blackmail, outlived the entire world that invented it. Every time we use it, we are speaking Highland. Number 16. The caterans and the watch. All of this needed fighting men, and the Highlands were full of them. The caterans, bands of hardened warriors and raiders who lived by the sword and the creach, and against them, clans and communities would hire an armed watch. Professional fighting men paid to guard the cattle and patrol the passes. It was private security and private armies in a land where no government reached. The most famous watchman of them all, a cattle drover and protection man named Rob Roy McGregor, became a legend precisely because he stood exactly on the line between the two. Guardian and outlaw at once. To the people he protected, he was a hero. To the ones he raided, he was a thief, and he could be both on the same night, in the same glen. We're saving Britain's vanishing skills one video at a time. Subscribe and stay for number 3. Now the clan goes to war. Number 15. The slogan. When a clan went to war, it went with a cry. And that cry has quietly conquered the modern world. The slúath gem, in Gaelic, meant the host shout. A short, fierce word or phrase, often a name or a gathering place, that the clansmen roared as they charged, to rally their own and to put fear into the enemy. Each clan had its own. It rallied scattered men to a single point, and it announced, in one syllable, exactly who was coming for you. We borrowed the word for advertising and softened it into something you put on a poster. Its real name is slogan, and it was screamed by armed men running downhill at you. We call it a slogan. Number 14. And this is the one I promised you, the Highland charge. For half a century, this single tactic made Highland clansmen the most feared infantry in Britain. It worked like this. The clansmen would advance, fire one ragged volley from their muskets, and then throw the guns down entirely, and charge. Screaming their slogans, they ran downhill straight at the enemy line with a basket-hilted broadsword in one hand, a small round shield called a targ on the other arm, and a long dagger, the dirk, held beneath it. They closed the distance before the regular soldiers could reload, took the bayonet on the targ, and struck upward with the sword. Trained professional armies broke and ran from it, again and again, for 50 years. And then, on the 16th of April, 1746, on a moor near Inverness, they tried it one last time. And for the first time, it failed completely. The Duke of Cumberland had drilled his men in a cold new trick. Instead of meeting the Highlander in front of him, each soldier bayoneted the exposed side of the man to his right. The targe was useless against it. The charge broke on the bayonets, and with it broke 1,000 years. Number 13. The broadsword, the targe, and the dirk. The weapons themselves were a system, used together as one. The basket-hilted broadsword had a cage of steel around the grip that guarded the whole hand, so a man could fight with his fist as safe as his blade. On the other arm rode the targa, a round shield of wood and leather and iron studs, light enough to move fast and strong enough to catch a bayonet. And in the same shield hand, jutting out below the targ, was the dirk, so that when a man punched his shield forward to trap a blade, the dagger was already driving in. Learning to fight with all three at once, from boyhood, made an ordinary clansman into something a drilled soldier feared to face. Number 12. The Berlin. And the clans of the West did not only rule the land, some of them ruled the sea. Their weapon was the Berlin, the West Highland galley, a lean, oar and sail warship descended from the longships of the Norsemen. With fleets of them, the lords of the Isles built a sea kingdom across the whole Hebrides, ruling dozens of scattered islands and coasts from the decks of their galleys, moving warriors and cattle and power across the water faster than any enemy could march. Low and fast, driven by a single square sail and banks of oars, a Berlin could carry a warband into a sea lock on the dawn tide and be gone again before the smoke had cleared. For 400 years it was the master of those seas. A single clan, in effect, kept its own navy, and with it, a kingdom the mainland kings could not touch. Number 11. Mustering the host. And when the fiery cross went round and the clan was called to war, someone had to turn a scattered farming people into an army, fast. Mustering the host was its own hard skill, arming hundreds of men, feeding them off a land that could barely feed them in peace, moving them over mountains to a gathering point, and holding them together long enough to fight before hunger sent them home. A Highland army melted away as easily as it formed, because every man was also the one who had to get the harvest in. Raising it at all, and holding it, was a feat of leadership and logistics performed with almost nothing. The clan could raise an army in a day. And number 3 is how. Number 10, the tinchel. In the seasons between wars, the clan hunted, and its greatest hunt was a thing of astonishing scale. It was called the tinchel. The men of a whole district would spread out across the mountains and form an enormous living ring, miles wide, and then slowly close it, driving every deer on the ground ahead of them into a single glen or pass where the chief and his people waited. It took hundreds of men moving as one, for days, with total discipline. And the old writers who saw it said it was less a hunt than a war rehearsed for sport. It fed the clan, it trained it to move together, and it displayed the chief's power to command a whole population. No handful of hunters could do it. It needed an entire people. Number 9. The feud. To survive in the Highlands, a clan had to be good at something dark, managing endless violence without being destroyed by it. The feud, the long, inherited quarrel between clans, was a fact of life. passed down like an heirloom, flaring into raid and reprisal for generations. And the skill was not in the fighting, it was in the containing. Knowing when to strike and when to hold, when a killing demanded blood in return, and when it could be settled with cattle, or a marriage, or a bond, how to end a quarrel before it ended your clan. Whole families were wiped from the map by feuds that ran out of control. Surviving one was a civic art. Number 8. The stronghold. And a family living in a land of feud and raid built its home to be defended. Some raised a stark stone tower on a rock, some built a dun, a dristone fort on a height, and some, remarkably, built a crannog, an entire dwelling out on a wooden island in the middle of a loch, reached by a single hidden causeway a man could defend alone or by boat. Where you slept was a fortress, sited and built so that a handful of your kin could hold it against many. In a country with no law but your own strength, home was the last line, and it was made of stone and water and hard thinking. Number 7. The pipes. Above all of it, the gathering, the charge, the grief, was the sound of the pipes. Not the cheerful tunes we know, but the Seul Mór, the great music, slow, vast, intricate laments and gathering tunes that took a lifetime to master, kept and handed down by hereditary piping families who served the chiefs for generations. The pipes summoned the clan, drove the charge, and mourned the dead, and their sound carried for miles across the hills where a voice could not. A single piper on a rampart could tell a whole glen that the chief was calling, or that a great man was dead, in music that everyone understood without a word. They were not entertainment. They were the voice of the clan itself, which is exactly why, in the end, the law would come for them too. Number 6. Second sight. And in a world this hard and this uncertain, the clan understood its fate through belief. The second sight, and duthchas, the two sights, was the gift, or the curse, said to let certain people see what was coming, a death, a battle, a stranger, glimpsed before it arrived. The one who had it, the duthchas, was both feared and needed. Whether or not you believe there was anything in it, it was a real and central part of how these people made sense of a life where death came without warning off a hillside or a sea. It was how a hard people reached for some hold on tomorrow. And now the whole 1,000 years turned on. Number 5. The bard. The clan had a weapon more feared, in some ways, than the sword, the bard. The clan poet was no mere entertainer. His praise poems made a chief legitimate, sang his ancestry and his right to rule, and fixed his deeds in the memory of the people. But his satire could destroy. A poem of mockery from a great bard could shame a chief before all the Highlands, undermine his authority, and cling to his name for generations. In a society that lived by reputation and memory, the man who controlled the words controlled power itself. A verse could crown a lord, and a verse could break him. Number 4. Hospitality. And holding this whole fierce, armed, feuding world together was one law stronger than all the feuds: hospitality. It was an absolute, sacred duty that any traveller who came to your door, stranger, or even a member of a clan you were at war with, must be given food, warmth and shelter for the night, and safe passage while under your roof. To harm a guest was among the blackest crimes a Highlander could commit. In a lawless land where a journey could kill you, this single unbreakable rule meant a man could cross the country and live. There are old stories of a chief who sheltered, without knowing it, the very man who had come to kill him, and let him walk away unharmed at dawn because the roof was sacred and the reckoning could wait for another day. It was the thread of trust running through a world of swords. Number 3. And this is the one I promised you. The crann-tara. When a chief needed his whole clan under arms, and needed them now, he did not send letters. Most could not read, and there were no roads worth the name. He sent fire. A small cross was made of yew wood, its ends set alight and then quenched, and sometimes bound with a rag dipped in blood, fire and blood, for the burning and the bloodshed to come. This was the crann-tara, the fiery cross. A runner took it and ran to the next township, gasped out the place of gathering, and handed it on. That man ran to the next, and the next, the cross passing from hand to hand across mountains and glens. Within a single day, a burning stick and a spoken word could bring 1,000 armed men to one hillside, from a district with no roads, no writing, and no chain of command but this. The last time it was carried in Scotland was in 1745. Think of what it was. An alarm system that could raise an army in a day, run entirely on legs, memory, and fire. Number 2. The knowledge that made them ungovernable. Put all of it together. The mountains no army could march through, the language no official could speak, the loyalty that answered to a chief and not a crown, the ability to raise 1,000 men from a burning stick and to vanish into the hills after. And you understand the one great fact of Highland history. For 1,000 years, no king in London and no king in Edinburgh could truly rule these people. They could be fought, bribed, and sometimes beaten, but never governed, because everything about how they lived was built to answer to themselves alone. They were not a people who had escaped the state. They were a people the state simply could not reach. Number 1. Culloden and the law that finished it. And so, in the end, the thing that had never been governed had to be broken. On the 16th of April, 1746, on Drumossie Moor near Inverness, the Highland charge failed for the first time, and in under an hour the old world was finished on the field. But the killing on the moor was only the beginning. What truly ended the clan was not the battle. It was the law that came after. The Act of Proscription made it a crime to carry the weapons. The Dress Act made it a crime to wear the Highland dress. And the pipes were hunted too. A piper named James Reed was hanged at York, and the court ruled, in cold earnest, that because no Highland regiment ever marched without a piper, his bagpipe was, in the eye of the law, an instrument of war. Then came the clearances, and the people themselves were removed from the land that duthchas had once said was theirs. Understand what happened here. This world was not outfought, it was outlawed. Its weapons, its dress, its music, its skills, and finally its people made illegal one by one, until 1,000 years of duthchas and fosterage, the raid and the gathering and the fiery cross, survived only in song. Stand back and see it whole. For 1,000 years, the Highland clan governed itself, fed itself, and defended itself as a tribal family by a set of skills the modern world has no memory of. Belonging to land instead of owning it, building loyalty by giving away your children, raising an army with a burning stick, and holding a fierce and lawless country together with an unbreakable law of welcome. And it did not fade away. And it was not simply beaten. It was deliberately dismantled by law, skill by skill, because it was the last thing in these islands that a government could not control. We kept the mountains and the names and the songs. We lost the world that made them mean anything. So here is my challenge to you. Whether your name is a Scottish clan name or not, go and find out what your own people were doing 300 years ago. How they lived, who they answered to, what they could do with their hands that you cannot, and how much of it survived down all those years to reach you. Then tell me in the comments what you found, because this was never just history. It was one of the last tribal worlds in Europe, a whole way of being human that governed itself for 1,000 years. And it was not conquered. It was outlawed into silence. Subscribe, because next, we follow the cattle out of the glens, the drovers who walked whole herds 300 miles to market across a Highland Scotland with no roads but the ones their own feet remembered. That story is coming.